This is where the bonus intro goes, if I had one. The gameplay this week is just the opening of Halo, courtesy of the Master Chief Collection. I've actually been playing more of the crew this week, but I had this footage floating around, so I thought I'd use it up. Maybe the crew next week, or maybe Sunset Overdrive. I picked up a used copy of that after the free weekend, because I was pretty impressed with it. Anyway, pretty busy time for games. I picked up a couple of big titles this year that I missed out on. I finally picked up South Park: The Stick of Truth and Dark Souls 2. After all, if you're going to do a yearly review, you should probably talk about some of the bigger releases. And, as far as the first part of the year was concerned, those two were pretty big, so, yeah, they'll feature. Anyway, let's get on with the questions, shall we? Galactic Ghost says, "Hey Stu, random question. If you could be any animal, what would you be, and why?" I would be a human, because humans are animals, and more importantly, they are the best animal. Yogfan2302 says, "Hey Stu, have you ever been to Poland or Norway?" I'm Polish, by the way, and live in Norway. I haven't, but I would like to visit both. My wife would dearly love to go on a cruise of the Norwegian fjords, and eventually one day might do that. And I quite fancy seeing more of the Baltic coastline. So I quite fancy a break in Pomerania, Gdansk or somewhere like that. I don't know where's good, but Gdansk looks nice. The old town's pretty, Cheese883 says, "I don't mean to sound like that guy in the wrong room, but have you ever played the Pokemon series? If yes, have you played Omega Ruby / Alpha Sapphire?" I have played the first Pokemon. I played Pokemon Red on my Game Boy. Now, I hastily add the fact that I'm not a Gen 1er. I've just played Generation 1. I acknowledge the fact that the later Pokemon games have their own merits. And I'm not going to tell you that the only true Pokemon are the first 151. But as far as handheld gaming is concerned, I'm not really into it. I don't know, I don't find them particularly ergonomic. I prefer to use a controller and look at a television screen. And I don't really feel the need to play video games whilst I'm travelling. And if I did, well, I suppose I'd maybe look to my phone. I actually did buy a PSP back in the day. That was, I think, almost exclusively for Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, which were like handheld GTA, basically. Because I was a big GTA fan, and I still kind of am. I liked the platform, and for me it was impressive, that basically it was PlayStation-grade hardware in a very small package. And Loco Roco and Patapon, I did enjoy those, but I just didn't use it enough. So for the most part, my gaming is grounded with controller or keyboard and mouse, and a conventional display. Captain Killfeed says, "I'm very curious about what a game bug actually is. I hear it so often, but I don't actually know what they are. Like a line of code gone wrong or missing." Essentially, a bug is when a piece of software does exactly what it's told to, and it's not supposed to. Computers are very logical things, and they follow instructions to the letter. But sometimes you'll have the intention, you'll tell the computer, "Do X," you'll run it, and it'll do Y instead. And you think, why? And because computers are very logical things, that there's a very good reason for it, and the blame can be put squarely at the programmer's feet. And thus begins the process of bug fixing, when you try and make a piece of software do what it's supposed to, and track down the source of any unexpected behavior. Tyson Matsuki says, "Do you share your video progress / finalized product with anyone before the video goes live?" Rarely. I tend to operate without much of a buffer as far as my output's concerned, so once a video's finished, it's normally uploaded, and then within at least a couple of days it will go out. Duncan Clark says, "Have you ever played This War of Mine? It is short and very difficult, but I found it very compelling." I haven't played it yet. I have heard good things about it though. I will probably keep an eye out for any cheap deals in the Steam sale, the Christmas one. I have a bit of a backlog, so I can wait until I pick it up, get it a little bit cheaper that way as well. Will Bill 2003 says, "If you didn't succeed in making YouTube content, what other job would you have considered doing?" Well, prior to this YouTube nonsense, I was a web developer, so, I could probably go back. I don't think web design has changed that much. Otherwise, probably something multimedia related. I'm a pretty good fit for marketing roles, although it is soul draining. But whatever it would be, it probably would involve computers in some fashion. But then, I suppose most jobs these days do. Headshot Machine 1 says, "Ah, a fellow comrade. Now that we know that, are there plans on a video about the glorious Mosin Nagant in the Iconic Arms series?" Yes, there is. I think it's missed the cut for Season 2, but I think it's an almost definite inclusion for Season 3. Conundrum says, "Actually, schedule is objectively correct, unless you pronounce scheme as sheem." Yes, the English language, that bastion of consistency. I'm not sure what sense of objective you're using, but I think a dictionary is a pretty good objective measure of language. And if you look in a British English dictionary, it will tell you schedule. I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying it's in the book. Chris Sheridan says, "Hey, Stu, any chance we could know what your next big project is and when it'll be released?" Currently, I'm working on two smaller projects, the first of which is a rekindling of the Origins format that I did for Akimbo Origins. It's going to be a video about open world games and the origins of them. Depending on how well that goes, I may do a series of 6 similar Origins videos. I've got a few ideas lined up, stuff like regenerating health, procedural generation, maybe even like stuff like terrain destruction. Basically, it's kind of a transverse history slice where I can take one facet of a video game, or video games in general, like explosive barrels. That could be another one. What was the first game to feature explosive barrels? I actually don't know. This is where, writing and researching the video comes in. I've actually changed the approach slightly in these ones. They're a little bit more like the Game DNA ones, where we work backwards instead of doing a straightforward chronological history. So, for instance, with explosive barrels, we'd start with a contemporary example. Call of Duty generally has explosive barrels littered around the map. They explode when you shoot them, okay? They're a pretty common trope in video games. Half-Life 2 had a whole bunch of flaming barrels. The first Half-Life had them as well. In fact, they were present in Quake, in Doom. There's a ribbon of them all the way through FPS history. So Doom. Was Doom the first? I've got no idea. I want to say there are some rail shooters like arcade light gun games that have exploding barrels. I want to say stuff like Operation Wolf, maybe. And you could probably go all the way back to Donkey Kong, which it does have a lot of barrels, does Donkey Kong. I mean, Donkey Kong is all about the barrels. Some of them, well, they're not explosive, but some of them are on fire. So there you go, that's a completely unrehearsed sample of what the exploding barrel video might be like. So the open world video should be the next video on my channel. Don't know when it's going to be, when it's done, or at least on a suitable slot after it's done. I'm also working on an end-of-year special, kind of like a yearly annual review. I'm actually treating it in a very similar way to the way I might treat a history video, but it's recent history, it's the stuff that happened last year. I'm planning on releasing that right at the end of the year, so on the 31st of December. And if that's successful, I might do the same thing for 2015. I'd also quite like to do retro editions, where I look back at a certain year, talk about the events and the happenings and the releases and the games that came out that year. The idea being that if I do an annual every single year and then do some retro ones, eventually I might have a whole playlist featuring every single year of gaming, eventually. Maybe. Anyway, this end of year stuff is a little bit blue sky, but in January, my first priority is to get back to more proven stuff. So, Season 2 of Iconic Arms, the first thing I'm going to do in January. Another 6 episodes, and I'm confident enough in that format that it's going to perform pretty well. Once that run's done, I'll take a few days off. Maybe I'll do like a one-off special in the middle there. But after that, I'll be doing a run of 6 Retro Hoy episodes. It's actually 6 classic FPS games that I'll be covering. So collectively, this series will form a pretty comprehensive history of FPS. That's my plan anyway. After Retro Hoy, don't actually know. I might do a 6-episode run of Origins. I've also got an idea for an 8-part series, which I'm going to keep relatively secret because I think it's a pretty good idea and I think it might do well in the view department. It represents a rare confluence through something which is actually quite valuable and interesting from a historical perspective, but also one that lends itself quite well to a clickbaity title. As a general rule, I don't like doing clickbait, but I'll tell you what, it works. My worst Xbox 360 games ever with its all caps title. I'm sorry for that, by the way. But that video, it does spectacularly well in terms of views. Now, I'm not saying all my content's going to be like that, but I want to see how this 8-part series goes down. It'll be fun. So anyway, that probably takes us into the middle part of 2015, doesn't it? After that, who knows? Who knows? Maybe Iconic Arms Season 3, maybe another run of 6 Retro Hoys, maybe something else completely out of left field. There may be another brief history at some point. I probably will repeat the 5-part structure, because it worked pretty well, I think. It lets me have a better structured set of videos, lets me cover a broader topic without going on too long. At this point, I don't know what the next brief history video will be. I think the 2 prime ideas are a brief history of driving games, or a brief history of game difficulty. Honestly, I don't think either of those 2 ideas will perform quite as well as a brief history of graphics, but nonetheless, I think they could be quite valuable. Anyway, I talk too much about future plans. Don't want to give away all my secrets, no. ProG871 says, considering your continuing and thorough dissection of video game tropes and mechanics, are you trying to carve yourself out a niche as some sort of video game historian? Good money in the textbook game. I'm slowly but surely painting myself as like an Xbox Grandad character. That's my ambition for about 30-40 years from now. A grizzled curmudgeon in a flat cap, asking the kids, what's your gamer score? And getting all nostalgic over the classics, you know, like Call of Duty 4 and Gears of War. Those were the days, I said. You didn't have to drill a hole in your skull. You could just pick up a game and play it. Something like that, anyway. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds? Writing a textbook, now that's an interesting thought. I've often thought about making companion books to major series that I do. I could easily turn a brief history of graphics into a book. I know my way around InDesign. I know how to lay out pages and stuff. I can do the whole graphic design and typography thing. I could produce the whole thing. The only thing holding me back is the copyright question. I can imagine sourcing permission from hundreds of game companies might be a bit of a headache. There needs to be like a machinima for books. I suppose that would just be a publisher. But yeah, no, I'd quite like to do a book. But I'd probably need some assistance on the legal and the publishing front. I know self-publishing's a thing, but I don't know. I mean, the fact is, it would take me a while to write a book anyway, so with all these risks and challenges, I'm not going to embark on it. Bright Sky Fire says, Stu, it might be a bit naive to label all game developers as passionate developers and whatnot. To some, it's just a job. One that some developers do without passion and very poorly. It's that kind of generalization that helps no one understand anything. Well, I'd hate to paint everyone with the same brush. It's just when people refer to game developers as lazy, I think they're pretty ignorant to the realities of video game development. Most of the negative traits found in video games come from external pressures on the developer rather than the developer themselves. It's always budget constraints, time constraints, or some external force pushing. In most cases, it's the publisher. But that's not to say that publishers are evil. It's just that, you know, it's an industry, and developing video games takes a large team of skilled individuals, which means that salary requirements are often incredibly high, which means if you want to have a return on investment, then you've got to have deadlines. You've got to say, look, you've got 2 years for this, and we've really got to meet this Christmas deadline. If you don't, we're losing money. So no, not every single video game developer is passionate and bright-eyed. It's true. But I can guarantee that none of them set out to make a poor game. They'll be doing the best they can with the allotment that they've been given. 115 Prestige says, Hey Stu, have you ever gotten a YouTube strike because of an accidental copyright infringement? And if not, do you know anyone that has? On my main channel, the only time that I've got a strike has been for some of my very, very early videos, which are no longer public. I uploaded some plain, straightforward Grand Theft Auto 4 footage. Really is more of a test for my capture hardware than anything else. But that had some radio music in it, which was caught by the automated filter thingamabob. So those videos got strikes. I also did a video on the... I got into the beta of the next-gen Xbox dashboard, and I did kind of a tour of it. And I showed the Last FM app, and I had about 10 seconds of some Fatboy Slim, and that got picked up. But ever since then, I've been completely clean as far as copyright's concerned. Grace Dash says, just an idea, you mentioned Belgian weapons for Season 3. Then I guess you're going to consider the Belgian FN Mini-Me, and how it influenced adaptations such as the M249 SAW. Sadly not, no. I think the first LMG that I'm going to cover is going to be the M60. I think there are no arguments, it's more iconic than the Mini-Me, so it's only right it should be the first LMG. I would have liked to have put the M60 in Season 2 were it not for the fact that there are too many American weapons already. I've got the M16 and the M1911 lined up, so the M60 would have meant that 50% of the series was American by mass. And quite frankly, that's too much America. So to keep an even mix, I guess I've pushed back the M60 to Season 3. But there will be 2 Belgian weapons in Season 3, like I said, the FAL and the P90, I think. So that's 33% Belgian by mass, that's okay, that's about right. That's about as much of one country as I'd like to have in a 6-part series. I think perhaps Season 4 will have German end caps. So perhaps the G36? And maybe a World War II weapon. The Sturmgewehr, maybe. Possibly. Who knows? Robbie Swope says, Stu, it's math, not maths. Always with the black and white thinking. Math is American English, maths is British English. Both are correct. Everybody's happy. Goki God says, Hey Stuart, do you communicate much with other YouTube celebs? I saw a 10-second video a while back with you, Hutch, and a couple of other well-known guys, and wondered if that was a one-off or not. That video in question, that was very much a one-off. That was my presence at COD XP. It was nice. It was a good chance to meet a bunch of guys that I'd only sort of seen in video form before. But attending like meetups and stuff isn't a hugely regular thing for me. I mean, it doesn't help that most of them tend to be in America. And I don't have that sort of travel budget, you know? Otherwise, yeah, I talk to other guys sometimes, not frequently, you know, Twitter, email sometimes. But I just keep myself to myself, really, you know, it's just about making videos. But I can do that on my own. I'm a one-man production team. I do kind of wish there was like a local scene, like for making YouTube videos. Like a shared space in Manchester or something, I don't know. But with the global phenomenon that YouTube is, it's quite difficult to get like a more touchy-feely community going on. Yagi says, Stu, what do you think about Overwatch, Blizzard's FPS MOBA, or FPS MOBA? And to add on to that, people pointed out to me that Ubisoft owns a great lot of classical FPS characters. So, if they were to team up with Valve, could they actually make an FPS MOBA with characters of Wolfenstein, Doom, Half-Life, Duke Nukem? Do I have your nerd chills going? You see, in FPS MOBA, I like FPS. MOBA turns me off a little bit, though. Can't say I'm a huge fan of MOBAs, but, you know, Blizzard do good stuff, and it might be good fun. I will keep an eye on it. I think the idea of getting like a whole bunch of FPS superstars into one game could be quite cool. I suppose it would be kind of like the Expendables, but instead of washed-up action heroes, you'd have Master Chief, Doom Guy, BJ Blazkowicz, Gordon Freeman, the quiet one, maybe the hat-wearing protagonist from Blood. Duke Nukem, of course! You couldn't have a party without Duke Nukem. Do you know? If it wasn't for the horrendous nightmare that licensing would be, that's a cracking game idea. Super Imposter says, what do you think of the current scene with the A or AA developers? It seems most are talking about either independent developers or the big bad AAA ones. So, do you think these middle grounds of game development will rise again like in the older days? Or will they drown in darkness? The mythical middle ground. Well, you have established developers with modest budgets, able to produce games which appeal to a niche audience. The closest we've come to a decent middle ground of developers like that is probably the golden era of PC gaming, like the late 90s. There was fantastic innovation and some really sort of interesting games that came out around about that period. But today, I don't know, it hasn't really taken off. And you've got indie developers, and then you've got AAA, and there's not really a huge amount in between. I suppose stuff like Paradox are pretty good, and they've got their own niche. Same goes for Tripwire, I suppose, as well. These are PC developers in the moulds of yore, and gaming is definitely richer as a result of their existence. But one thing we're not really seeing is a graduation of indie developer into the small leagues of major development. To pick up one case study, if you look at Mojang, huge success with Minecraft, you would hope that they'd reinvest the massive amount of money they made from that game in building their studio. But no, they've been bought by Microsoft and, well, I guess at some point we're going to get a Minecraft 2. But it's going to be under the supervision of Microsoft, huge AAA. With the huge growth in PC gaming over the last few years, maybe we'll see an increase in the number of mid-scale developers on that platform. Consoles are only really good for AAA developers, because they've got the magnitude needed for that level of budget. So PC is probably the place to look for sort of mid-scale stuff. I don't know, time will tell. Alright, time for one more question, I think. Parker Betag says, Hey Stu, I've noticed something quite interesting on your channel. I checked your About page, and I noticed a small box in the top right that says, Support this channel. What's that all about? Are you taking tips for uploading videos now? Or does Machinima require that on your channel? I think I activated that last night. I got an email from YouTube saying, Hey, fan funding is now available. I thought, brilliant! They must have finally rolled it out to the UK. Only it appears they haven't. They've just offered it to my channel, which is based in the UK. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on there. But anyway, I activated it. Because, you know, I like new features on my channel. And if, you know, YouTube wants to offer an avenue for me to accept tips from my audience, then, you know, that's fine. So, yeah, I turned it on. I think I need to speak to Machinima regarding payments, because I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think it will get rolled into my monthly payment. Anyway, it is with some trepidation that I approach this whole crowdfunding thing. I know it's fashionable to have a Patreon, and I look at people, you know, similar size to me on YouTube, and I look at their Patreon and I say, good God, they're getting how many thousands per month? And I'm not going to lie to you, YouTube. I look at that money and I think, do you know what? It sure would be nice to have money for doing nothing. But I haven't succumbed yet. However, there are rumours of YouTube adding closer integration with services like Patreon. And part of me thinks that I'd be a fool to not open up that avenue. I don't need it quite yet, but relying on advertising revenue it's a pretty sweaty affair at times. So with closer integration with the YouTube stuff, I might enter it into consideration. I'm never going to push it down your throats or promote it or anything like that, because I don't want to. I really don't want to. I don't want to be a digital panhandler. One thing I was considering is doing a bonus vlog for the sole benefit of patrons. A slightly more intimate setting, you know? Once a month, something like that, I'd share a beer with you. I get quite a few people asking if I'm ever going to show my face. I don't really want to, but hey, $20 is $20. Anyway, those are my current thoughts on crowdfunding. And of course, if you were to contribute through another means, then, you know, you would be welcome to use AdBlock. But then, if you were going to use AdBlock, you're probably using it right now. You, yes you, I'm on to you. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I shall continue beavering away to get these 2 videos done before the Christmas break. I shall do another Crush Dev Diary this Sunday, and another bonus next week at some point. So, until then, farewell.